In this video, we discuss what many people don't want to talk about: disasters. That's right, we're talking hurricanes, wildfires, earthquakes, wars, etc. We look at the frequency with which disasters happen and their predictability. Then we provide some simple tips to help you and your family prepare for short-term survivable crises. Our video concludes with a look at how to persist through the more unthinkable, global disasters that could impact humanity's survival.
Everybody calm down. Walk north.
Go! Go! Go!
Many people think disasters are one-off events, that they occur rarely and that we don't need to do much about them. History shows, however, that this conception is wrong. Disasters occur persistently and constantly. We need to anticipate them and begin preparing before they happen. We shouldn't be surprised each time a disaster hits. The statistics bear out the fact that we are experiencing disasters more and more frequently. According to the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Association, between 1980 and 2018, the average annual number of disasters in the United States was 6.3. But over the past 5 years, this number has doubled to 12.6. Much of this is being driven by climate change, which is causing an increase in the number and severity of storms, droughts, and other weather-related phenomena. Some events are predictable, others less so. Black swan events are examples of events that happen out of nowhere. For example, the airlines crashing into the Twin Towers. They are defined by 3 criteria. First, they are so rare that we can't calculate a probability estimate for their occurrence. They have catastrophic impacts when they happen, and after they are done, we explain them as being predictable or obvious. Other examples here include the outbreak of World War I and the 2008 financial disaster. The idea that we should prepare for all possible risks is known as all hazards planning. Society and our government can prepare better for things like radicalization, cyber attacks, pandemics, and climate change. One way to do this is through the Incident Command System, or ICS. It allows different agencies like fire, police, military, healthcare, etc., to coordinate their responses and act under a flexible but unified command structure. We don't describe the details of the ICS here, but this system needs to be more widely adopted by corporations and political leaders. Juliette Kayyem defines situational awareness as the memorialization of catastrophic events as they occur at different times and places, and the use of this data to prepare and deal with them. Situational awareness consists of understanding what is happening, which is perception, what it means, which is comprehension, and what might be likely to happen going forward, projection. For example, school shooting incidents have shown that when police delay before entering the school, more deaths result. As a consequence, it should be general policy that the police enter and attempt to stop the intruder as quickly as possible. One way to test an institution's response planning efforts is to simulate a disaster and have an outside group called a red team do an evaluation. Random events can be thrown in to see how the responders react to novelty. In the field of cybersecurity, this is called a penetration exercise, in which hackers outside the institution are employed to try and break into the computer system. Let's talk next about short-term preparedness for disasters of a minor caliber. There's a lot that we can do as individuals and families to mitigate the potential effects of a disaster. Perhaps the simplest of these is to create a disaster supply kit. It is suggested that a basic emergency kit should contain the following items, and this is not an exhaustive list. It would include at least 1 gallon of water per person for several days supply of non-perishable food, a battery-powered or hand-cranked radio, flashlight with batteries, a first aid kit, a whistle to signal for help, and a dust mask to filter out contaminated air or to prevent viral infection. Other items would include things like local maps and a cell phone with chargers or a backup battery. A list of additional emergency supplies was recommended by the Centers for Disease Control in 2020 and can be found on their website, as is indicated. In preparing for short-term disasters, the Habitat for Humanity recommends a 4-stage process. The first is to identify these hazards, to notice which hazards are most likely to occur in your area, and how to prepare for each. This will also include getting contact information from emergency management organizations like the Red Cross. The second is to hold a family meeting to make sure that all members of your family are familiar with the plan and what roles each member will play. Decide on where to meet in case a disaster strikes, and create an evacuation plan. The third is preparation. So in addition to the emergency kit mentioned above, this would include locating safe places in your home, knowing how to shut off utilities, and posting emergency contacts. Lastly is practice. This involves practicing the entire plan on a regular basis. Every 6 months, in fact, is recommended. Okay, now let's talk about long-term preparedness for disasters of a much larger magnitude. There are a number of things we can do to prepare for such existential risks. The most obvious of these are the quote-unquote doomsday preppers, creation of family-sized bunkers that contain extended food stocks and other supplies, although this might not be the best way anybody wants to spend the last few days of their lives. To give you a sense of the lengths to which some people are going, Robert Vicino of Del Mar, California, is selling space in an underground bunker in Indiana that can accommodate 80 people. The rates were, as of several years ago, set at $50,000 per adult and $35,000 per child. This cost includes everything needed to survive underground for an entire year. The site contains its own nuclear, biological, and chemical air filtration system, and its own off-grid electric power generators. The Lifeboat Foundation lists a number of situations where humans can continue to survive if some catastrophic event happens. The first of these are ships or marine platforms that are far enough offshore to avoid contagion or disaster taking place on land. Colonists can be brought on board by boat or helicopter, being screened first in a quarantine area prior to being admitted. A second option is submerged nuclear submarines with a crew of about 100 people aboard that can interbreed with sufficient genetic diversity. Again, not an option many of us would prefer, but perhaps a possibility in some possible future. A location to the far south may have promise. These are locations like New Zealand's South Island, Tasmania, or Tierra del Fuego. These areas have a high specific heat, meaning that the oceans can capture and dissipate heat more efficiently. They can thus serve as a heat sink against global warming. The far south is also stated as offering protection from nuclear war or nuclear winter because most of these weapons are located and targeted for the northern hemisphere. A very long-term solution is to populate other worlds, ensuring that humanity's survivors will persist on planets other than Earth should something dire happen. Of course, this will take centuries to millennia to occur. A permanent Mars settlement at the earliest has been estimated to be in 2050. It will take much longer than this for a substantial portion of Earth's current population to move off-world and inhabit planets in outer space. The fact of the matter is that although post-apocalyptic scenarios make for interesting movies, we don't like to think about how they might play out in the real world. Our lives are already difficult enough, so planning for even small-scale disasters is additional stress in already stressful lives. But if we put some thought and action into getting ready for such crises, it could help us, our families, and even our species to survive.